And we are live.
Thank you for that. Good evening. I call the January 12th, 2021 meeting of the Community Task Force to order. Thank you for joining us this evening via live stream. We are conducting this meeting online as is allowed by state law under the current state of emergency due to the pandemic. Could we please have a roll call?
Certainly. Mr. Amponsa?
Here.
Ms. Bannister?
Here.
Dr. Hoadley?
Here.
Ms. Merrier?
Here.
Mr. Robinson?
Here.
Ms. Shofurora?
Here.
Mr. Wang?
Here.
Mr. White?
Here. Present.
Mr. Napke?
Here.
And Ms. Bompana?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Members of the task force should have received the minutes of our previous meeting. Does anyone have any questions or changes regarding these minutes? All right, I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes.
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, thank you for that. Moving on, we have, we're going to be talking about our economic subcommittee. I believe you guys had your meeting a couple of weeks ago. And Bridget, if you could present us with an update, that would be amazing.
Hi, everybody. I am reporting to the task force from the minutes of the first meeting of our subcommittee on economics and infrastructure, which was held virtually with some city staff on December 29th, 2020. I will note just for the minutes, we are currently calling ourselves the Subcommittee on Economics and Infrastructure, not just economics. Unless Shoshi just joined, which I don't think he has, the other two members of the subcommittee aren't with us this evening, Shoshi and Erica, but I'm going to do my best to just quickly reprise what we did during the subcommittee. I do want to remind folks that the Subcommittee on Economics and Infrastructure has a pretty broad task, as we defined, I think at the last task force meeting, or maybe the one before that. Just broadly, we figured we would be working on housing issues, mobility issues, and workforce issues. And during our very first subcommittee, we basically just decided, at least initially, to focus our efforts on workforce, which means employees, and employers. So the three objectives that we basically discussed and generally approved as a small subcommittee was that we want to help expand diversity, workplace diversity, specific to employees for businesses wanting to do so in the Dublin area. We want to increase opportunities for minority-owned businesses and for diverse vendors and subcontractors to work in Dublin and for Dublin businesses. And the third thing was to explore how the city could become a resource for fostering more diversity, equity, and inclusion at the workplace. As a subcommittee, we agreed to try to meet again in mid to late January, and we're working on firming that up. We want to invite anyone else who wants to join us. You're welcome to join us, even if you decide to just come in once and not stay. But we're hoping we'll get, a couple more folks who want to join this subcommittee. We did also list a few tasks that I think are relevant that you might want to know if you don't have a chance to review the minutes. This is a good reminder to the whole task force that we're trying to be more responsive and look on Microsoft Teams, which is where the city staff is currently posting a lot of the info that we might need to know. So we as a subcommittee are trying to stay up with that and read through some of the reports and the memos that are there. We do want to reach out to Mr. Homer Rogers, who I think is in the city management division, to provide an update to the whole community task force, which I think Dana had already planned on him coming, but we definitely have some questions regarding workplace and diversity that we're hoping he'll address. And the third thing was that we are requesting a memo from the Division of Economic Development to give us a sense of, assuming they're the right department, what are they up to already when it comes to these topics, and how might the task force work with them to help develop a resource for businesses in Dublin and employees and employers, and even those outside of Dublin who want to work here in the Dublin area when it comes to diversity and inclusion. I was hoping Erica or Shoshi was here to add anything that I might have forgotten or to highlight something, but that's it for now. If anybody had a question, I can try to answer before we move on. No? Do I need to move? No. Do reports have to be approved in Robert's Rule of Order, or can Kofi just move on?
He can move on. This is essentially an update, and you'll approve your minutes at your committee meetings.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that update. And I would just like to reiterate, if you guys can just spend a couple minutes just looking through the teams. There's a lot of useful files that have been uploaded that I wasn't even aware about that are incredible to just look at. Moving on, I wanted to take this time to really talk about the subcommittees in general and just talk about our motives a little bit more. So specifically, I'm aware that each one of you is a leader in your respective community. And I'm also aware that each one of you had a drive, a motive to want to join this task force. So I wanted to go around each person, member of the task force. I want us to talk about what was our individual drive to join this task force, and also what is an outcome we would like to see from these three subcommittees, in specific or in general. So I can start off. Once again, just go around, please. Talk about the drive that made you want to volunteer for this, and then an outcome you would like to see from these three subcommittees: communication, education, and economics and infrastructure. So I'll start off, and then the next person can go. With me, I grew up in Dublin. Growing up in Dublin, there's a lot of things you hear, see, and experience as a Black student that you don't really understand the gravity of these things until you grow up and you're recollecting on your experience and thinking back to my time spent in Dublin. There's a lot of moments that I don't want other Black students or Black young adults to go through in Dublin. So with the summer coming up and everyone's attention to addressing racial issues, I wanted to hopefully take a stand in Dublin and change the position of the Dublin moderates, the people who would rather not address issues in hopes of keeping the peace or in hopes of keeping everyone pleased. I wanted to change these people's positions and motivate them to do what's right, even if not everyone agrees with it. When it comes to an outcome or outcomes I would like to see for these three subcommittees, I would just like to see the Black voices of Dublin not being left out in these changes. So that's it for me. If we can go literally from top to bottom. Audrey, would you like to go next? And then we can do Bridget and so on.
Sure. Yeah. So for me, I am a mixed student and I'm still in the school system. And my experience, I would say, is different from like a lot of my friends, but also like even my sister. And I wanted to join this because I know that like we're kind of referred to as like a Dublin bubble, and I would like to kind of break that a little bit. educate other people, and then in conversation, like these meetings, maybe educate myself some and like learn some things from other perspectives that I might not have known. And so I think like something I want to get out of this is just like open discussion is really good for just like educating others. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Thank you for that. Bridget?
Thanks, you guys. Well, I definitely feel connected to Dublin because our business has been here from the beginning, which is over 15 years, I think now. And my kids all went through Dublin schools. I lived in Dublin. I'm in Powell technically right now, even though we have Dublin schools. I just care a lot about Dublin, but I also am super aware and sensitive to just how fortunate we are. And I am inclined to share the fortune, so to speak, particularly when it comes to housing. I imagine like many of you, and if we weren't in a pandemic, I'd suggest we just sit around and talk about this stuff outside of a virtual Zoom meeting. But I could talk a lot about things that I care about. So I think that I would like to see, specifically in the Economic and Infrastructure Subcommittee and in the task force in general, a focus on workforce development and workplace diversity, which is the first thing that the subcommittee is working on, which I'm really glad, and that's super relevant to a lot of businesses like ours who realize just how really we've fallen short in regards to prioritizing how to diversify both our employees and staff, but also the folks that we subcontract with, the vendors and freelancers and independent contractors that we connect with. There's so much room for improvement. And then of course, there's that whole other part of this challenge for businesses that if you can succeed in getting applicants and making hiring decisions, then you have to figure out how to retain folks. And that's a whole other challenge. So I'm particularly interested in, I assume if our business is interested in that, there are other businesses, and I think there's a role for the city to play to help us meet these goals. When it comes to housing, I just think that there's a lot of opportunity to make housing more affordable, several different ways to do that. And I'd like to see the diversity of folks, both race and ethnicity, but also income, change a little bit in Dublin and give more folks who can't afford a $300,000 or $600,000 home, give them access to some of the things that we take for granted in Dublin, which starts with really good schools, but it also includes safe neighborhoods and access to leisure paths and churches and communities that promote well-being. So many opportunities that we just take for granted in our wonderful city that if we can find ways to share with other people, it doesn't mean that we don't get it too. We can broaden the opportunity. When it comes to the other two subcommittees, I also care a lot about education. I think there will be more talk on education, but so I won't go there specifically, except to say that I can assure you that I had no clue growing up in Ohio about the history that I understand now. And I know for sure that my 3 kids who graduated from Dublin City Schools believes that there's room for improvement in regards to a better understanding of racism primarily. And then when it comes to communications, I think that, if the city of Dublin cares about these topics, and many of us do, including the moderates that Kofi would like to encourage to care, which I would too, I think there's lots of room for us as a community to work together, not just on task force, but through lecture series, through efforts to introduce folks to other cultures and ethnicities, and lots of opportunity for communication initiatives and effort that I don't have any specific ideas about really, but I'd like to support. So I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Jamil?
Hello. So a big reason I want to get involved is kind of like yours, Kofi. Growing up as an African American in the Dublin School District, I would say that my experience has been pretty good, but definitely different than most of the people that that are my peers. Like just from a racism standpoint, like there's just so many things that like little things, small and big things, but a lot more little things that um, go undetected. Like a lot of microaggressions that I have to face that they probably don't either know or they don't think are that big of a big deal. I mean, it doesn't matter like what race. Like it could be, yeah, it just doesn't matter what race it is. But definitely the microaggressions that people just haven't learned and that I have to face and many people have to face. And I definitely think that being on the education task force, that there can be a lot of change in the education system of just learning kind of what you said, Miss Bridget, about just the racism effect and yeah, basically how just on the education reform, there can be so many changes just to educate from a younger age, like elementary school, just so that when they're growing up through the school district, even if there's not that much diversity in the city of Dublin, they'll know that when they encounter diversity, like what is racist, what's not, and the history of multiple ethnicities and races, and not just what the standard American education is. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing with us. Sammy, do you have anything to add?
I'm a senior this year, so I wanted to like get involved, do something that would leave like a lasting impact. So even after I graduated, I could like cause something good to happen. And this summer with the Dear Dublin Instagram, that really like drove me to want to get involved. And especially excited for the education subcommittee because as a student, I feel like we have a different perspective to bring.
Thank you. Stephen White, do you have anything to add?
I do. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Kofi and Bridget, for leading the meeting today. Kofi, great question. And I think a couple of things, a little bit about my background to kind of illustrate why I joined this task force. I'm born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. I grew up there. I'm a first generation college student. We grew up in the community I grew up in was very low income. Lots of challenges associated with poverty, violence, and challenging dynamics. But I was fortunate to have the opportunity to have a good education to be able to help sort of put me on the track of providing me with an opportunity to go to college at The Ohio State University, which is where I went for my undergraduate and graduate studies. And one of the things that I found was that both through my work as at OSU and then working 10 years in the U.S. Senate doing policy work, was that education can be the great equalizer. Regardless of your background, regardless of your community, regardless of where you're from, everybody has the potential to be great. I'm a firm believer that everybody has inherent leadership opportunities. You just have to find that dream and reach to it and grab it and run with it. And some of the challenges we have now that we've seen across our country and world, candidly, and it does not escape Dublin, does not escape Columbus, is a disproportionate impact for those who are people of color. That the challenges that we see playing out across socioeconomic impacts, particularly around workforce, particularly around when you look at the numbers around housing, low-income housing, challenges around the not only the pandemic and disproportionate impact on health of people of color, but then also when you look at much more broader implications of challenges associated with the opioid epidemic and the disproportionate impact of folks in the Black community and beyond. And so I bring all that to, and I share all that because as you look at what I saw as this is an opportunity, is that how can we leverage not only the city of Dublin, which is an up and coming, in my view, a city that's doing big and great things, but how do we continue to be a leader so that way other communities look at us and say, wow, look at what they're doing. They're moving the needle to address this issue, and they're already doing great things. We're not perfect. None of us are. But what I'm hopeful that this task force can do is to be able to chart a path for recommendations to address some of the things that we've talked about over our several previous meetings. And particularly when we look at our subcommittee task force around workforce and education, I want to echo something Bridget talked about, which is how do we create these pathways for our people of color in our community, women, LGBTQ, who live in Dublin, but then also want to work in Dublin, who may not live in our community, but want to work here. And how do we create those pathways for our businesses to continue to be successful and to offer these opportunities to help bridge the gap that we have around workforce, but then also other gaps around providing opportunities for people of color to be able to get these positions. But then also, how do we create that pathway leading up to it, particularly through school and education? And so, that's a long-winded way of saying my hope from the subcommittee is that we can create tangible action steps coming out of the subcommittees that city council and our leaders and all of us can look at as a community to say, okay, here's our baseline. We know if we want to move the needle to address these issues, we need to do action step 1, 2, and 3 and be able to track that to determine whether or not we're seeing success in that, not only in the short run, because what we saw over the summer was a reawakening of societal inequities, but we need to be able to take what happened over the summer and continue to build on the work that we're doing here for long-term changes and long-term changes that are going to help families, help young people, and help our community in general. So that's kind of my hope. I'm optimistic, and I think we've got a great group here to be able to help execute that.
Thank you for sharing with us. Dr. Hoadley, would you like to add anything?
Sure, Kofi. I think my motivation, and I think the common word that I've heard everyone say that's spoken to date is education. And obviously, as the superintendent of the school system for this community, my role is to make sure that this school district at least, is pointed in a direction of improvement and constant change. We're living in a very difficult world that started long before this pandemic. And usually when people look toward education, they see it synonymous with schools. But at the end of the day, public education is a very simple concept. It's the home and the school working together for the betterment of students. And in these challenging issues, I firmly believe, and I believe 30 years ago when I chose this as my profession, that really education is the key and can make any change possible known in this world. But it can only be done with the partnership in the home, which is obviously our community. So I joined this community task force because, again, if we're going to make any change whatsoever on the difficult and heavy topics that we're talking about, it has to be done in collaboration across our community and not simply put upon simply a school system that is charged with educating children. This is as big of an adult issue as it is a student issue. And frankly, it bothers me that a majority of this community are still students. We should have more community members that are sitting on this call tonight. And the fact that we don't should ask us to have questions about how important this is to some in our community. I think that's a very real question that this task force needs to explore. And my motivation on this, or my outcome that I'd like to see, is for the adults of this community to lean in and see that just like our students, that this is an important issue in our community, and progress can be made if adults and students and the school and the community all work together.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Vincent, is there anything you would like to add?
Sure. Thanks, Kofi. And I resonate with a lot of speakers tonight when they talk about why they want to join the community task force. And I am a first-generation immigrant. Came to the U.S. in 2002. So went to school, then applied for visa, got a job, and moved into different places, and decided to settle down in Dublin 10 years ago. And I really enjoy the community here. Very diverse. People are very respectful to each other, and so neighborhood is wonderful. We've got a good school district. However, there are still areas that we can see that we can further improve our diversity and also improve the racial equity here, like economic equity and also culture understanding. So I think this task force is a great vehicle for different parts of the community. We come together, talk about our different perspectives, and exchange ideas how we can bridge the gap among different ethnicity groups and different cultural groups. I think a lot of racial bias or bias against the underrepresented group was because a lot of times it's because of lack of understanding, lack of compassion. So I am very excited that we have a very diverse group. We have younger people, we have older people, different life stage that will help us to build a common mutual understanding of our community. And in the meantime, we look at different areas like education, economics, and other areas that we can find ways to help bridge the gap among different groups and help understand the ways that we can augment each other, make our life, make our work more meaningful. So I'm very fortunate to be able to talk to you tonight, and I'm really excited that we are getting on the right path. We are dividing up into some committees, and we'll get some meaningful work done. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing with us. Will, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, as a white student, I'm kind of blind to the racism that some of my peers may experience, and I've, never experienced it firsthand. And when I was presented with the opportunity to join this task force, I saw it as an opportunity to learn about the experiences of any of my classmates and to attempt to try and avoid those things and maybe educate some of my white friends and make sure that we can all avoid those things and just try to make the schools and the community a better place. And I'm just here just to offer my viewpoint and try and make a difference.
I appreciate that. Nancy, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Will, for saying that. I think what I would say is, yeah, oops, sorry. You never know what you don't know unless, you open yourself to knowing. So most of the times you walk in darkness because you don't know that there's light. So I guess when I first moved here, it was because of school. 11 years ago, I had never heard of Dublin, Ohio. And my husband got a job here, and I Googled best school district, and a series came, and there was Dublin, Ohio. And I was like, well, let's go there. So looking back, my children have now grown here, and I am now an educator in the community. My biggest thing is to dispel misinformation. And there's this old adage that says experience is the best teacher. And I remember, we used to be told, no, don't wait for experience. You don't have to go through something in order to learn. But the more I think about it, I think the interactions with people help dispel all those stereotypes. And just as Will said, he was not even aware what Kofi's experience is, and you wouldn't be unless you're in the person's shoes, or unless you actually have an engagement or an active interaction with the people. So the reason I joined this task force is, one, I'm a passionate learner. I want to learn what I don't know. And I figure the only way to do that is also to be with people that don't all look like me and don't all come from the same background as me, because then it opens me up to different perspectives. And then the other thing is to dispel misinformation, because I believe that is the biggest thing that keeps people in their cliques. When you think about a different group, you have all the stories about a group that you've never interacted with. So I want to be able to be a voice, even with the circles that I interact with. But I want to be able to share other people's perspectives, because I have interacted with other people. So this task force to me is important, because we are a diverse team, and we are looking at building and bridging any gaps, and not just assimilation, but also having every voice have a space. And I know we've talked a lot in our meetings how about some cultures are not free to talk, and as a result of not being free to talk, we don't hear their voice, and so they never have a voice, they never have representation, and it's not because they don't have the ability. So I think I want to make sure that no one's left out.
Thank you for that, Nancy. And is there anything anyone would like to add on? Anybody I missed? Anybody who just wants to say anything before we move on? All right, thank you. I would like to steer everyone's attention to one subcommittee. That is the communication one. We currently only have 2 people in communication subcommittee. The reason I wanted to draw you guys' attention here is that if you would be willing, if you would be interested in joining this subcommittee to give your perspective, that would be appreciated. Some of the questions that we're looking to address and answer in the communication subcommittee is, what can we as a city do to educate our community? What do we as a city do? What can we as a city do to educate our community? So that's one of the main questions we're looking to address. So if there's anyone willing to double up on subcommittees, let me know. Is there anybody right now?
Yeah, so I wasn't at the last meeting, but I emailed Dana, I think, and like offered to help out in communications if you need me. So just because I wasn't at the last meeting, I'm not sure what you would need me to do, but I can help out wherever needed.
Okay, thank you. I'll reach out to you. Anybody else?
Hey, Kofi, I can I'd be able to help out for that subcommittee.
All right, Stephen, thank you for that. All right, moving on to updates. Dr. Hoadley, do you have a school update for us?
Sure, Kofi. I've got 3 things I wanted to give an update on tonight, just that have happened in the last week. Last Monday, January 4th, we had Mr. Steve Francis do online professional development for all of our building administrators, principals, assistant principals, admin interns around implicit bias. That was about a 2-hour session. It's the same session that Mr. Francis did for central office administrators back in August. Also, members of our Board of Education participated in that 2-hour in-service, and Mr. Francis will be circling back with that group in February to do another 2-hour training on racial discrimination. Also on January 4th, and that was a training day for our teachers, we had an LGBTQ plus presentation at our high school level for one of our high school faculties there. And ultimately, all of our high school and middle school faculties will be receiving that training over the next 6 weeks. And then finally, yesterday, I've been updating everyone on the new position, a director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We posted that position yesterday, posted it out looking for applicants. That went out on a nationwide scale, starting already to see some people express interest. Timeline for that, we will look to do interviews of which we will heavily involve our community in late March. with the hope of bringing a recommendation to our Board of Education to consider in April. Depending upon where this person lives, if they're local, it may be an earlier onboarding. If the person is out of the area or out of state, then hopefully we would have the person on board by the latest in June. So that's our timeline on that. And again, that position was posted yesterday. So those are the three things I wanted to update our committee with this evening.
Thank you for that. Anybody have any questions for Dr. Hoadley? All right, JM, do you have any LGBTQ plus update for us?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair. I have two updates, and good evening, members of the task force. The two things I'm going to bring to your attention, one has to do with a case that happened the day after our last meeting, so we just missed it, but I've been holding on to it to share with the group. Back in December of last year, there was a judge that came out and basically blasted Ohio officials on the state's policy of preventing transgender people from changing the sex marker of their birth certificate. This is important to note because this policy went into place in 2016, and prior to that, there are instances where people changed their birth certificate due to transgender status. This happens frequently with adopted children and also people who legally want to change their name to make modifications to their birth certificate. So the policy was reversed, calling it unconstitutional because there was no rationale really to have this put in place in 2016. The lawsuit was filed in 2018, so it took 2 years to reach a verdict. This is important to note because several of the plaintiffs said that they were humiliated and threatened after their transgender status was revealed to their employers through their birth certificates. So there's Lambda Legal, which is a legal defense group for LGBTQ plus rights. And they said that Ohio is one of only 2 states in the country that still denied transgender people ability to change their sex on their birth certificate. Tennessee is now the only remaining state with such a policy nationwide. So it's important that we have accurate birth certificates because they allow access to a variety of benefits and also have implications for employment and housing. Not to mention it aligns with who they are as a person. So I think this is a good step in the right direction. It's important to note that there's still a struggle and a fight for equal rights and protection under the law for members of the LGBTQ plus community. And that's not even beginning to address the stigmas and other discriminatory practices that may be occurring still. On a lighter note, based on feedback from community members, there has been a desire for the new Dublin Bridge to be lit in a rainbow arrangement for the month of June for Pride. I don't know if that is a sure thing at this moment, but I think this group could be, if you so choose to be allies in the cause, it's something that you could help echo and maybe, give your opinions to see if that can happen. Something as little as lighting a bridge in rainbow colors may not sound like a lot or a big deal, but it could be a big deal for someone in the community, particularly the youth or other members who are struggling to be accepted and see that as a beacon of hope and light. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I hope that members of this community can voice their support of such an effort. Those are the two updates I have at this moment. I'm happy to take any questions.
I have a question and a comment. This is Bridget. On that judge, the ruling, is it possible, I imagine, legislation in the Ohio legislature could affect whether or not the ruling stands? Is there a way for the legislature to change the law, or are you saying the ruling basically said the legislators' attempts to stop changing the birth certificate? I guess I'm a little confused, and I'm wondering if if there's potential action against the ruling that we might want to be aware of.
Great question. What I'll do is I'll share an article. There's a few articles that covered it, but I think the Cincinnati Enquirer did a nice coverage of it. But needless to say, the lawsuit was directed towards, I think, the Ohio Director of Health and also the Ohio Department of Statistics or Vital Statistics. I'm getting that wrong, I know. So I think since it was a policy set in place during the Kasich administration, I think this helped reverse that policy. So I don't know, as the time of the article is written, there was no appeal or legal challenges to that ruling. That could have changed by then, but I'll see what I can dig up. I will share that article to the teams so that you can read up on it.
And then I wondered if you have the info now, or I'd ask you maybe at the next meeting or whenever you can collect the appropriate info. I would like to recommend to the task force that we go ahead and support the efforts, if there are going to be efforts to light the bridge with rainbow colors in June. And we probably need a few details about like when and whether it's under serious consideration, and who we as a task force would be encouraging to make the right choice if there was a choice to be made, or maybe it's just an effort by the task force to support a choice that's already made. So I'm assuming there's quite a few of us who would love to support that.
What I can do is I'll see if I connect the dots for the process of the changing of the lights. I don't know the process off the top of my head, but I'll get some details and we'll figure out what, if that's something that can be done.
That'll look so cool. I love driving down Dublin Bridge, the bridge street with the lovely snowflakes that are on the side of the bridge, you guys probably know, and all the decorations. And I can just imagine the suspension bridge lit up. It'll be awesome.
I can certainly provide more information. I'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
JM, I had a question about the lawsuit. Has a verdict been reached on the lawsuit, or is it ongoing?
The verdict was reached. So they came out on December 16th, the next morning after we had our meeting, task force meeting. And so I think he ordered that the policy be reversed immediately, calling it unconstitutional. So I don't think that should be an issue. But I'll post this article on the teams, and I think if there's any more information, I'll provide that as well.
All right, thank you for the update. Does anyone else have any questions for JM?
Hi, this is Lindsay Weisenauer, and I'm in Communications and Public Information. I just wanted to interject and let you guys know that there is actually a form for requesting colors for the bridge, and I just double checked to make sure that our lighting package does in fact accommodate all colors of the rainbow, and it does. So I will put a link in the Teams page, and really only one person would need to fill it out, but if you'd like to do that more than once just to make a statement, that would be fine. But I will share that link with all of you so that you can request the colors for whatever appropriate time.
Thank you, Lindsay. That's good to know.
It's the first year for our bridge, so it's a new thing, and we have a policy for that and everything. So I will share that information.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? All right, we currently do not have a Chiefs Advisory Committee update. Esau was not able to join us today. Same with Dana. So moving on to new business, open-ended discussion. I wanted to leave this open, really. I wanted this to be a time where if anyone has any questions for each other, if anyone wants to bring up a topic that's going on, or if anyone just wants to talk about an issue they've been thinking about for some time, this would be the time to talk about it. So I'm opening up the floor to anybody who has any concern that they would like to talk about.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Dr. Hoadley. And Dr. Hoadley, thank you so much for the update about the diversity position. And I have a freshman at Jerome, and I also have a sixth grader at Carr. And recently they have started the new semester, and my daughter changed from remote learning to hybrid. And she was very excited, and she was very glad she was back to school. And my son, he was enjoying the school as well. He's going to hybrid on the 19th. So they were looking forward to it. Thank you so much for your hard work leading the school district to guiding us on the right path. And so my question for you is, for the diversity director position, if we know somebody, shall we just refer them to the website, or is there a contact person?
Yeah, Vincent, first off, thanks for those kind words. I'm glad your kids are back, and I'll share our teachers are happy to see our kids coming back to school as well. Yeah, our website has the posting link. We take all applications electronically, and so you could refer the person to our website. But if they have any difficulty, you've got my email. Just reach out to me. We want to make sure that there's no obstacles to the application process. So if the person would run into any technical difficulties, reach out to me. I'll have a member of our HR team contact them and walk them through the process for applying.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I also want to just, because I know some members of our community will watch us, we want to have students, we want to have employees, we have members of our community set on the interview team, just like we do when we hire a building administrator, like a principal. And so if members of our community have that interest in participating, again, that'll be probably early to mid-March when we start the interview process. They could reach out to our HR team. They could contact me. We'll probably also have some way to acknowledge interest on our school website. And one of the beautiful things about using the platform of an electronic platform like Cisco WebEx, or we'll use most likely Zoom, is you can have a lot of people on the call from the interview panel, but it's not as intimidating as a candidate walking in a room with 50 people sitting around listening to them interview. So great opportunity for a large number of our community to become involved in the hiring process for this very important position.
So question for you, Dr. Hoadley. Are you looking to form a one panel, or you are looking for multiple panels?
Great question. Yeah, we typically do 3. So we'll do a community panel, then we'll do usually a panel for this, since it's a director position, we'll do a panel of school employees, teachers, could be building level administrators. And then, we may do a panel of students as our third. So we'll separate those out. They'll each independently conduct the interview with the finalists. We'll probably bring in at least 6 and maybe 9. So there's a little bit of a time commitment that a person would be committing if they're participating to the interview process. And then we like to have each committee really choose unto themselves, and especially when we're involving students, so they can have independent, they're not feeling like there's adults in the room that they've got to agree with. They can give their own insights. So we see a panel of community, a panel of school personnel, and a panel of students for this interview process.
So you want for the community panel, for example, you want to form that panel, the group of people, they will need to commit to interview all the candidates, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, just from an employee fairness standpoint, because again, this is a employment process. So we need people to commit that if we bring 6 candidates forward for the interview, we need you to set in all 6, because if you're giving input on 5 and you say, I liked candidate number 5, but you didn't set on candidate number 6, then we haven't created a fair, and we have to be an equal opportunity employer. So again, we want to make sure that we put out very clear expectations. We'll most likely bring 6. And what we like to do is 2 nights of interviews, bring a panel of 3 on like maybe a Monday night, a panel of 3 on a Tuesday night, and then have a debrief usually on Wednesday, see which, and then we try to surface 2 finalists from that, bring those persons up to the central office level for final interviews. So yeah, we would need people to commit that they're going to set in on every interview for the candidate slate that we bring forward. That's a great question.
Thank you.
If anybody else had something to say, I didn't want to take up anybody else's time. But I did want to bring up something that I consider pretty important. I I guess when I think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's like, why are we together on a task force? And fundamentally, it's this sense of, we know that there are people in our society that have been disenfranchised in some way, broadly from institutional racism or personal discrimination, economic disenfranchisement just because of the zip code that they've been born in, and then the ability to, take advantage of opportunities. There may not even be any, like Stephen talked about education, depending on where you are, where you've been born, do you even have opportunities that other people take for granted? So, when I think about what happened this last week in DC, I get very upset because I think about one of the most cherished opportunities for equity is the ability to ensure that someone's vote counts when it comes to our elections. And the idea that there is an effort to disenfranchise literally millions of votes based on conspiracy theories is very upsetting to me. And I wonder if the task force has an interest in considering a simple statement about what happened. And I haven't spent much time trying to figure out what that would be. But basically, I just texted Kofi earlier today because I had just thought about it. And I guess there's two questions. One is I have proposed language, but I also don't know if the task force, what technically we would do as a task force if we even agreed to a statement of any sort. So I'll just propose that the task force consider something to the effect of that our task force condemns the violent efforts to overturn a legitimate election of President-elect Biden and President-elect Vice President Harris. And I invite folks to consider that, and or we have a discussion if you want.
So this would be a question for the staff. How would we go about this? Should we vote about putting out a memo first just for legal reasons? And then after that, how do we go about distributing this memo?
This is the first one, I guess. Jenny, do you have any suggestion?
I have a question. Did the city of Dublin put anything out?
I'm not aware of it. Council meeting hasn't happened yet. It's next Monday or next Tuesday. Jenny, do you have any more information?
I do not. I know that council has received a few emails that they've taken under consideration, but because all of their discussion has to happen in public, they have not met. So I don't know if that's not currently on their agenda, but I don't know what their thoughts are on that. As far as the task force, to do a memo or put out a statement, you probably would need to have a motion so that you had, the majority of the body agreeing.
Okay.
So before I would move for a motion, because obviously then there's a vote. If I move for a motion for the task force to accept some statement, which like the one I just read, is the vote then taken right now and it's only dependent on the individuals in the task force meeting right now?
That is correct. So what I would recommend is if you choose to do that, what I would probably do is do a roll call vote so that we could make sure that all 10 of you cast a vote since we are so close to having quorum. Excuse me, but yeah, since you are the only members of the public body this evening, you would be the only members voting on the motion.
And I guess I would be interested to hear from folks tonight, you know, if you, without spending much time developing the language matters. You know, what are we saying? I'm going to read it again because I was trying to be as apolitical as I could while also making the point. And I think if there's interest in this, we can work together on updating or amending the language. But I also think there's an urgency, which means if we're trying to amend things beyond tonight and not vote tonight, then obviously we're waiting till next month. I was suggesting that the task force basically, quote, condemn the violent efforts to overturn the legitimate election of Biden and Harris, or something very similar to that.
Yeah, I hear you, Bridget. I think for the interests of the group here, I think it would be helpful for folks to, I just feel like we got a lot of individuals on here who probably don't have had a chance to review anything. I don't want to have to speak for them. I don't necessarily want to put them on, maybe give them some notice or something. That I understand your point on the urgency, but I think it's probably behooves us as a committee, since there are a lot of people who aren't here today, to at least send out a notice or something for them to review before we put a number of folks here.
I appreciate that. I think that you're right. Unless some other people disagree, I think the urgency should not be the deciding factor. So I'd ask all of you could we create a statement that at least the 10 of us seem comfortable with, so that we'd have something that we might propose to the broader task force that we know all or most of us feel comfortable with. Is that reasonable? I mean, it's already 7.
I think
maybe what we go ahead. Maybe what we could do, Bridget, is put together a motion saying we want to put together a statement and maybe sending it out to the task force to review, and then at the next meeting vote on that. That way it gives us a chance to put forth something to everybody to read and see, review. And I think today is, do we want to do it? If the answer is yes, maybe something could be sent out to folks, and then we can have a discussion period around it at our next meeting.
My thing about this is I understand that it would be nice to let people think about it, or let people who aren't here, you know, think it over. But I think concerning this, it's got to be the position of we're either doing it today or we're not doing it. Because we're going to have to wait till the next meeting to even have a discussion about this. Next meeting is going to be, I believe, February 12th. When February 12th rolls around, people are not thinking about this anymore. Even though it's a huge historical event, people are going to be wondering why now. So if we're talking about this and planning on doing it, I strongly believe we gotta accept it today or not do it at all. So
I agree. Sorry, can I say something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would agree with what White is saying, because if you want to put a message that people receive and that is enduring, I know you're saying that if we have to wait till next month, maybe we could look at before next month reviewing. However, if we rush out at something, then you also risk losing the audience you're trying to reach, because we want to make sure that what we're doing is not a reaction, but it is based on core principles. Core principle is democracy, and if we're looking at what principles we are wanting to uphold, so it doesn't look like like a reaction. So I think I'm more definitely doing it, but doing it in a careful way to make sure we do not lose the audience that we are trying to reach. I don't know if that makes sense.
It's hard when everyone makes so much sense to me. I think everyone's point of view here, I mean, all the points being made make sense and have validity. I guess since I'm the one talking about it, I'm just going to say that I'm inclined to wait a month and try to develop support for a statement, partly because we're just the task force in Dublin. You know, the urgency is important, but also I think especially in regards to the credibility of the task force, we want to say something that we're going to stand by, like Nancy was saying, based on our principles. And maybe there's a little bit of preface that would be included, you know, talking about this idea of, you know, the democracy and disenfranchisement of votes and how relevant that is to all the other equity, diversity, and inclusion issues that we're trying to deal with as a society. So I will not be moving to recommend an approval of the statement that I offered, but somebody else can if they need to. Instead, I would like to figure out whatever the process is to work with a few of you to maybe get the verbiage a little bit better and then share it with the task force via email with the idea that I would move and hopefully get seconded for approval in a month.
I would like to speak on that and say, over the course, I forget what month we started on this, but it's been at least 5 meetings, and I feel like every single time we push back something each and every time, and like the process is just going really, really slow. And it took us even just 4 months to get subcommittees down. And I feel like if we keep pushing things back, one, like Kofi said, it'll be so far away from the event. And with President like Biden already in office, it will be like this is just like meaningless pretty much. So I feel like I agree with Kofi about it has to be now or never, because we, as a task force, we just honestly move pretty slow on getting things done. And I feel like this would be a good way to start changing that if we can just do something about this now. Like, I mean, even if we all agree to say, okay, we just don't do it then, but we got to at least decide whether we all do it now or we don't do it at all. So instead of just waiting a month.
This, Jamil, if I could I was just chuckling here why I think this is a great group, because you've got young and old, and it seems the young are like, hey, if we're going to move, let's move. And we've got us old, cautious people. Yeah, so so your point, Jamil, if I'm hearing correctly, is we've just kind of been meeting, but never really had anything to show for it. And this would be at least a step of showing that we are serious about what we're wanting to tackle. Okay.
So this Spencer, I heard different voices, not as different voices. We want to do things right. We want to convey the right message. And I can hear that if you want to create a very robust statement, it's going to take time, and also take time for each community member to review and sign on to it. Also, in the meantime, we want to express something, and so one assumption will be, so what's the standing of the committee and our voice? I mean, we express something. What are the desired results out of that action? Let's say we publish some statement. What do we want to achieve? Then we can look at that and decide what's the best approach. Or it's just a matter of we want to, hey, we are a group of people, community task force. We want to express the support of the democracy process. We want to condemn the violence, the rioting. So I think if we want to just express a view and also express what we are looking at as a community, and maybe think about something very simple, maybe one sentence or something. That may be a possibility. If you want to talk about a few things, that probably takes some time for us to develop a consensus.
I like what Mr. Wang said about just, even if it's just a short, simple statement. But if we wanted to go and do more like in depth, is there a way that we could all like just quickly gather for like maybe like 15 minutes tomorrow? I don't know if that would break any like legal actions or anything regarding like live streaming or anything. But even if we just get a short amount of time tomorrow so that we all can be there, but it's still relevant. I don't know if we could do that or not, but I would look into that.
I believe when it comes to that quick of a turnaround, I don't think it's possible. Jenny, correct me if I'm wrong, just because if we have the majority of people, it would have to be an official meeting.
You are correct. And we would have to give notice of a public meeting. It doesn't have to be a huge, like week-long notice, but it does have to be a notice. So it would have to be on our website, and we usually send it to the paper and things like that. But yeah, you cannot have a majority or it would be a task force meeting.
So yeah, it's getting late. Here's my recommendation. So it sounds like there's a desire to say something because of the what happened in the past week is a major event in our lifetime. As a community task force, we want to express our opinion, and also basically, since we were selected from the community, we want to reflect what our community is thinking about these major events. What if we just say 2 or 3 sentences, very simple, and if we can get on the same page, we vote or something. Would that work? Do we have quorum to do that?
I think the best way to move about this is just to have a legit vote. Who wants to do it today versus who wants to wait till the next meeting? It'll avert any unnecessary, back and forth dialogue. I think just straight to the point. If you want to do this, we have to do it today, or if we want to do this, it had to be next meeting, which is next month.
Do you think maybe Nancy or
I was going to say, I think it would be helpful to have that statement because obviously I think all of us are in agreement that we do want a statement, but I think the issue was how the statement is, because we want a statement that is lasting. So maybe if we can come up with a statement before the vote, I don't think, and maybe I'm also assuming, I didn't think the issue was not wanting a statement, but it was the wording of the statement.
I think that's a possibility that we could try to work right now on expanding the statement a bit. The other question I was wondering is if maybe those who have task force experience on other task force, I mean, maybe there's a way to sort of meet everyone's needs, which is I could move to get approval and vote on this statement, assuming it passes. We could also, as a task force, plan to do additional work related to the statement, like fleshing out our position on why we're condemning the violence and drawing the connections, like develop maybe ideally what we would have done before this meeting, which is developing sort of the position paper that that we as a task force would have on record in a month that supports what we pass and approve today. Is that crazy, or does that seem possible?
I think so if we want to develop a robust statement, we have to work offline and also put it out to the community to vote next time. And if we want to, these two options is not mutually exclusive. You can do that both, or you can do neither. So if you want to think about the time urgency, you can just say like one sentence about something, condemn the violence or support democracy. So that should be easy enough for people to understand, and also we can express opinion on it, and we do that today. Then we can develop a statement, more comprehensive one, reflect the multitude of our views for next time.
Agree with that. We could do a quick statement today and then expand later, but I agree that we should at least have like a small 1 to 2 sentence statement just written today, at least.
Yeah, I think that, again, I think it's, I can go either way on this. I think it's always better to get the buy-in of the whole. I guess my biggest concern is that we don't have a huge portion of folks attending tonight, which is, if we're going to put out a statement, they're not represented. But I think we could do both. I think we could, if we wanted to do something today. Unfortunately, I cannot. I have to hop off. One of the things I would, if we're going to do a statement today, what I would hope we would talk about is that we condemn the attack. It's something along the lines of we condemn the attack on the U.S. Capitol. It was an attack on our democracy itself, and that we urge peace and peace and democracy, and something along those lines. I would hope that gets kind of included in there. I don't know, we'd have to wordsmith it a little bit, obviously. But and then also kind of setting it, if we did a small statement here, what could we do for next time for the much larger, the larger committee to weigh in as well for those who could not attend tonight.
Nice to ask you. You already put together a good statement, Stephen. Do we want, Dr. Hodley, do you have any opinion as an educator? What do you think we express like simple statement?
Yeah, I'm fully agreeing that it's important that, frankly, everyone condemn what we saw last week. That was an attack on really what it means to be an American United States and the democracy that we're so blessed to live under. It was appalling to me to see that. I guess when you ask for my thoughts, I want to go back to what Jamil said earlier, and that is, we're 5 months into this, and we're talking about an issue for 25 minutes. It's not on the agenda, and we're not going to have any more people join us if we continue to go off on these non-agenda items and spend a good part of our time on here. We've got a really critical mission. This is not it. So I guess that's truly my thought for tonight.
Okay, so I have a one sentence statement. You guys can approve it, and then after this meeting, if the people who want to expand on it, you guys can expand on it. The one sentence statement that I just wrote out was, the Dublin Task Force condemns the attack on the United States Capitol and democracy and fully supports a peaceful transition of power. Is there anyone who disagrees with that memo? All right, Jenny, do I have to start a motion for the task force to pass that memo?
I think you would probably frame it as a motion to make a statement on behalf of the task force, and then read the statement again for me so I can read it into the record, and then I can call the vote.
Okay. I'll accept a motion to approve the task force sending out a memo. The memo being the Dublin Task Force condemns the attack on the United States Capitol and democracy and fully supports a peaceful transition of power. All in favor, please say aye.
I second that.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. So once again, that is the statement we're going to be putting out. The people who want to expand on that for the next meeting, please go ahead. Is there anyone who has any new business to talk about? All right, our next upcoming meeting is planned for February 16th. The people in the educational subcommittee, we just got an email about our meeting. I believe it said January 24th. That's a Thursday at 4 o'clock. Yeah, I'll accept the motion to adjourn if there's no other further questions or comments. Anybody?
I move to adjourn.
All
I
in favor,
second.
say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you guys. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night. Thank you. Good job, everyone.